Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 1 discussion. Today, I wanted to talk about rare belts in patch 3.28. So we're talking about rare belts. Why do I have a unique belt on the screen? Well, it's because the belt slot has been dominated by unique items for a long time. And when I say dominated, I really mean it. Here is a list of all of the belts that were being used on level 96 plus characters at the end of Keeper's League, and here is another list, this time limiting only to level 100 characters. So an absolute majority of level 100s were wearing Mageblood or were wearing Foulborn Mageblood, which does exactly the same thing, just with a little bit of a reflected meme going on. And otherwise, very few people using rare belts at all. For a long time, the best belt in the game by far was Headhunter. 3.16, I think it was, came along and brought in Mageblood. Mageblood just dethroned Headhunter really quickly. It's not that Headhunter isn't best in slot for some builds, it's just that for most builds, Mageblood eclipses it by quite a bit. Screams of the Dessicated. This is coming out in patch 3.28. This has some potential. We don't know all of the criteria about exactly how this is rolled, but it has the potential to be even better than Mageblood in some circumstances. That said, we're not here to talk about the belts that you get when you've got hundreds of divines to throw at the belt slot. Today, we're going to be talking about the belts that you use. Before then, we're going to be talking about rare belts. Grinding Gear Games put out the teasers for the Mirage League. And what I've done since is gone back and had a watch through that again. And I've looked for important information and I've clipped some important individual frames. I want to start with one that is going to look like completely nothing. And that is this Colossus Mallet. Why on earth did I take a screen grab when someone is mousing over one of the worst items you're ever going to see at endgame? Something that every good loot filter and most bad ones is going to filter out. This is a crafting base, it's item level 77, there's nothing special about it. Why am I looking at it? Well, it's because of that item level 77. And that gives us some important information. What we know here, based upon the time that this was shown in the Grinding Gear Games video, this was the results. This was the drops after a blight encounter that was done in the Mirage world. And this was done inside a map. Now, the fact that it was able to drop a Colossus Mallet at the center here indicates one of three things. Either this map was level 77 and this dropped from a normal monster, or this map was level 76 and it dropped from a magic monster, or this map was level 75 and this item dropped from a rare or unique monster. We can't tell which of those it was. Most likely it was from a normal monster because normal monsters disproportionately drop scoured items. Okay, so why do we care what tier map we're in? Well, that's because there is a cord belt here. Cord belts are a new base, these things are crazy good, and let's have a look at the item level on the cord belt. This is something that you could see about 12 frames or 0.2 seconds after the Colossus Mallet was hovered over for just 1 or 2 frames. Here, the cord belt is item level 80. Now, we've already ascertained this zone is level 75, 76, or 77. What this means is that cord belts drop substantially higher than the level of the zone they're in, and this means you're going to be able to get item level 86 ones. Item level 86 belts can roll everything in the game, and it looks like, though we're not exactly sure whether there's any RNG involved in the item levels here, but if there's no RNG involved, then it looks like it just drops 3 levels above the zone level, which in this case is item level 80 in a level 77 map. At least that's my lead hypothesis at the moment. If it is the case though that there's some RNG here, maybe it drops plus 1, 2, or 3 levels over the zone level, or even 0, 1, 2, or 3 levels over the zone level. If you do get one that's only level 83, you can always recombinate it up. There is some risk of losing it, but the reason you're going to want to do that is because this belt base is crazy, crazy good. It's implicit, can be anointed. Otherwise, it's got nothing else on it. What this means is that it's able to accept a blight anointment, just like your amulet can accept a blight anointment. What I want to do is take a look at some of the options that are available for you. Now I want to include both budget options and top end options here, but I think blight might be fairly popular because these belts are going to be really good, and as a result, oils might end up being cheaper. We really don't know though. Cord belts might be common, in which case oils could be limiting, or alternately, cord belts could be really, really rare, in which case oils won't be limiting, cord belt bases will be limiting. So the first thing that comes to mind is that you could anoint this with any of the notables that give a big boost to your auras. Champion of the Cause. This one costs a golden oil, as well as a crimson, which isn't free. 6% increased effect of non-curse auras from your skills, 8% reservation efficiency, 12% increased AoE. Guess what? This is one of the weakest of the notables that augments your auras. All of these are crazy good. Sovereignty is probably the strongest, but often your build will path there. If you're not pathing to Sovereignty though, definitely consider it. Champion of the Cause is another one, but there's plenty of others. Leadership, Influence, Charisma. Just pick one that you can't path to normally and allocate it, and your character just gets better. Quite a bit better sometimes. So that's one option that you've got. And I want you to compare in your mind, how good does this feel compared to the alternative? The alternative, if you're using a rare belt, is to use a Stygian Vise. If you had a Stygian Vise and you had the option to socket a jewel, and all that jewel did was allocate Champion of the Cause for you, I think you would normally use that. Not absolutely every single build, but most builds are going to say that that's more power than you would otherwise get. What's the next option? Let's imagine you're currently using a heavy belt. Not because they're a great belt base, but because you've got a load-bearing strength boost on it. That strength is necessary for you to equip a red gem on your character, or it's necessary for you to equip various armor gear. Well, why don't you upgrade? Instead of using a heavy belt, why don't you use a cord belt? And then you can use this very budget-friendly anointment, Utmost Might. Amber Oil, Azure Oil, Crimson Oil. Now, you probably already have this on your tree if you're playing a strength stacking build, but chances are you're not playing a strength stacking build. Strength stackers exist, they're great builds, but if you're playing on a budget, you're probably not at that point yet. And then in that case, a cord belt with Utmost Might, it's going to solve the same problems for you, but it's going to do so at a lower opportunity cost, because chances are the extra strength you're getting here will allow you to then unspec a 30 strength point and reinvest that somewhere else on your character. Next, I want to start looking at things that give you substantial defensive bonuses. Let's say you want to stick to a budget. Crystal Skin. This costs a silver oil, they're not free. It costs a black oil, they're not free, but it's not very expensive. And what you're getting for this, 1% to all maximum elemental resistances, and that slipperiness of 20% chance to avoid elemental ailments. That is something that could be the last piece that you're needing in order to get to that magical 100%, where you become completely and outright immune, including to things that are applied deterministically by something like the ground. So, Crystal Skin, sometimes this will just be a great budget choice. But maybe you're using a shield on your character. In that case, Sanctuary is an option. Fun fact, the Sanctuary page on the Path of Exile wiki is a little bit crangled at the moment, so there's going to be a bunch of crangle text here, but here we are. Sanctuary is 4% spell block, conditional upon you holding a shield, and 4% attack block, conditional on you holding a shield, and +1 tri-res maximum, and it comes for the bargain basement price of an amber oil and 2 teal oils. So this one's basically free. We don't know how expensive these cord belts are going to be. We don't know how rare they're going to be. But if it turns out that these cord belts are super, super common, super, super cheap, then in that case, I would just throw Sanctuary on it for now. Later on, when you're a bit richer, throw something that fits your build. But even if you're not using a shield, this is a great budget starter. And honestly, it's a lot better defensively than a leather belt would be. Leather belt's going to provide you a bunch of defenses in the form of life, but maximum life tends to be weaker than maximum elemental resistances, so this is going to be a better choice. Of course, maybe you're not using a shield, maybe you just need slightly different defenses. Well, Solar Steel, 30% increased armor, 150 flat armor, +1 all maximum elemental resistances. This is another option that you've got. But of course, there's going to be more than that, isn't there? There are 2 different notables on the tree, not just one, but there are 2 that provide you +2 to all maximum elemental resistances. So there is Nomadic Teachings and there is Prismatic Skin. Both of these cost double golden oils. So if it turns out that cord belts are easy to get, then that's going to mean that there's a lot more demand for these oils, and that's going to mean that it's a lot more expensive to get the golden oils that you want for this. That said, you've definitely got things you can use until you can afford it. So start out with Sanctuary, upgrade to Nomadic Teachings or Prismatic Skin when you're able to afford it. You'll also notice that so far in this entire video, I've only talked about notables that are really, really general. It doesn't matter whether you're life, whether you're hybrid, whether you're chaos inoculation. It doesn't matter whether you're attacking with a claw or casting spells or using traps that attack monsters. All these different things, everything we've talked about so far can work for. But chances are there are some even better options. If you're willing to dig through the whole list of everything that can potentially be anointed, you might find something that solves a unique problem that your build has. For example, depth perception. Depth perception is a really, really good notable, but it's something that's only useful if you need both critical strike chance and also accuracy simultaneously, which a lot of builds do. If you do need those stats, maybe that's the way to go. Anoint that on your belt, save a few points from actually pathing to depth perception directly, and invest those into something else like more critical strike multiplier. Or maybe just get critical strike multiplier as a belt implicit, which is something that there's many different options for, including arcane potency, which you can see here for an azure oil, a black oil, and a silver oil is going to get you 30% crit multi and 30% critical strike chance, albeit conditional upon you using spells. If instead you're attacking, you'll find a different notable that will achieve the same goals. The last thing I want to talk about when it comes to these comes from a precedent set by another item. Stranglegasp. You might have seen this item before. You might not have seen it also because it is very, very, very rare. Stranglegasp is something that drops from Blight Ravage maps, maybe 1% of the time that you complete them, and it does some crazy things. So, can have 3 additional enchantment modifiers. What this means is you can have a total of 4 anointments on it. So any of the things we've talked about so far, or any of the other notables that exist. I've only looked at general purpose ones. There's plenty of good notables that are single build specific that are available. So, Stranglegasp can get quad anointed. And then once it's quad anointed, you can actually corrupt it. And one of the outcomes that can happen is that it can lose. This can have 3 additional enchantment modifiers, and it can brick into a rare item. When it bricks into a rare item, what that means is it'll be reforged as a random item. Depending upon the way that you brick it, it'll either be as a 6 modifier rare item if you apply Defileorb to it, or it'll be a rare item that usually has 4 modifiers and that has either Shaper Influence, Elder Influence, or one of the 4 Conqueror's influences if you're able to get it into a brick state through the use of the double corruption chamber in Elver's Temple. After that, you can modify it with certain tainted currency, with really only the tainted Exalted Orb and the tainted Divine Teardrop being great. And there's a few more complex things that can be done in certain circumstances involving recombination. But the reason I raised Stranglegasp here is that it sets a key precedent, and that is that the additional enchantment modifiers you can get here are not actually tied to you maintaining this modifier on the item. And so, what happens if you take a cord belt and then you remove the can be anointed modifier on it? You were to then go and perhaps double corrupt it, or possibly even better, you would go and synthesize it. You can synthesize a belt as a high-end option involving the sacred life force that comes from killing a Shabi, and this can then provide you with additional modifiers. You lose the ability to anoint the item, but the anoints are already locked in there. They're not going to go away, you just can't replace them anymore. Once you've locked in a good outcome, you can try your luck. Imagine, for instance, you're playing a stat stacker and you've got Utmost Might or just something generically good, but you also have 15% synthesized increased strength on your character. And that's only one of 3 synthesis slots taken up. You could then conceivably have 2 more things on the item as well. Or if you're playing an intelligence stacker, which are definitely in a worse place than they were last league, but they're probably not completely dead, then you could have Utmost Intellect instead. There's so many different things that you could do here, all around the idea of synthesizing the item after you lock in the anointment that you really want. And if you get lucky with the synthesis outcomes, then you could end up with something truly, truly amazing. If you don't get lucky with it, you can always take it to the double corruption chamber and try your luck there. So that's the cord belt. Unlevel 86 ones look like they're going to be available in tier 16 maps. On top of that, in almost all circumstances, I'm definitely not going to say absolutely every circumstance that can be imagined, but in almost all circumstances, these are just better than existing rare belts. What's the top end though? I do think the top end is still going to be Mageblood or the Sirish belt, Screams of the Dessicated in most cases. There will be exceptions. There'll be circumstances where you do want to go with a rare belt instead, but they'll be few and far between. The unique belts are just so good. And for clear speed focus builds, Headhunter is probably still going to be best. So don't spend thousands of divines crafting the perfect cord belt when it might just be obsoleted by Screams of the Dessicated or Mageblood. But there is a lot of power to be had here, especially earlier in progression. A lot is going to come down to just how rare these cord belt bases are and just how much they're trading for. If it does turn out that they drop every single time the way that Stygian Vises do, then in that case, you can throw a cheap anoint on them like Utmost Might just to solve a problem right here, right now, and then you can work towards something better later. If it turns out they're a lot more precious, then you'll have to treat them differently. I'm going to leave it there. May your belt bases have interesting results.